What does biblical discipleship look like? Well, we could go to the 4 Gospels and learn that. We just look at the way Jesus discipled men. But of course, we're looking at a society in which men did not have necessarily, excuse me, for those of you looking by camera, it is early, and I didn't get much sleep last night. He lived in a society marked by agriculture, fishing, professionalism handed down from father to son, everyone owning their own shop. There was a great deal more freedom, so it'd be very hard to find 12 men you could walk around with for 3 years in America. We look at Paul and Timothy and their relationship. There seems to be a lot more going on there with regard to correspondence, checking up on one another, and maybe that can be something that would influence our model of discipleship. But let me say this about what's the problem with discipleship among mostly Baptist and Reformed type people. The problem is this. We turn discipleship into a small group Bible study. And that's where we go wrong. It's the same way. Years ago, cell groups were kind of on the rage. Everybody did cell groups. And charismatic groups and everything would just have a wonderful time and explode using cell groups. And so Baptists would get together and say, we need to do cell groups. And they'd do them and it'd be a flop. Why? Because they would turn the cell group into just another little service. It was just a microcosm of the service they already had. You see, why? Well, one guy'd get up and lead the worship, another guy'd get up and preach, and everybody would sit there. There was not any exercise of gifts. There was not a mutual ministering to one another. And so discipleship many times in our circles fails because it becomes nothing more than a small Bible study. Whereas true discipleship is that person living with you, seeing you. And that's why true discipleship is so extremely demanding and even frightful. You don't know me. You don't know what my house looks like. Even my closest companions in this room, you really don't know. You assume, but you don't know. You come live in my house for a month and a half, 2 months. Now that is not an invitation. I don't want anybody at my house. But you come live in my house and then you'll see. You see, someone can teach on marriage. And that's good. We need teach, but it's a whole different thing. See if those principles are lived out. You see. And that's the big part of discipleship that's missing. And part of it is our fault because we just turn everything into a structured Bible study. But the other part is in a sense, the fault of the world we live in. It is so very hard. So very hard to actually spend a lot of time together. I think that's one of the reasons why the movement among the northern Peruvian mountain men has grown and been so effective, because it's an agricultural society. And men can work with men, and men can pass the entire day. You know, like a lot of times people will write me and they say, Brother Paul, I just want to come to Heart Cry and just work alongside you. And I go, that'd be pretty boring. You sitting there while I answer emails for 6 hours. You see? It's just not the same thing. Now in the mission field, that's why I'm so envious of the Rhesus brothers and secretly despise them, because they are going off to the mission field, and they can do that. And if they don't do it, it's their own fault. They can do that. They're going to be an agricultural society living by the river. They're going to be able to teach Bible studies, but they're also going to be able to work alongside the men when they're planting in the fields. They're going to be able to share community. Why don't you stay and direct Heart Cry? Yeah, thank you. Or let's get Dr. Barry to do it, and I'll just go back to the jungle. But you see, one of the things that I truly believe, and you have to be careful in this, there's a lot of good about culture and society and structures, but I do believe that a great part of our life, you see, when you talk about godliness, you talk about, I want you to think about this. When you talk about being godly and being biblical, you're thinking about doing that in a context that you don't question. See, I want to be biblical in the American context. But then you have to ask yourself a question that's rarely asked. But is that American context biblical? And the answer is no. Busyness, success, working all the time. When you're not working, going somewhere. Usually to a mall or store or entertainment, or there's just no time for anything. And you're sucked into it. Can't work with your children. You can't do anything. I just, as I've been yesterday at home, homeschooling Ian and teaching Evan to read, just so frustrated at knowing there were all kinds of demands on my life. And just inside, just an inner turmoil going, I've got to get this done, I've got to get this done, but he really needs to do more than just simply give the right answer on this math question. He needs to understand what the concept is and why is it important. Because I saw that he was really just bored with math. And he said, why do we do this? And so it was a half-an-hour lecture of looking at all sorts of things of the glory of God in math. And you're sitting there the whole time just in your heart going, but I got stuff to do. This is really going to throw me off. I'm not going to sleep tonight. We're in a societal structure that, in a sense, is nothing more than a product of the prince of the power of the air. That's why I encourage you, if you're not going to preach, if you're not a preacher, then be your own man. Don't work for somebody. Start your own something. Even if it's just going to scrape by, start your own something. Don't be another man's slave. Because they want you to produce. Even if it takes 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, 7 days a week, they want you to produce. And there are guys out there that really don't care about the things of God, and they don't care about their family, and they'll be that guy who'll go and produce. So if you're not going to preach, I'd really recommend that you look at starting your own business to be free. I'd recommend, I think it's Vision Forum, has several classes and stuff on being an entrepreneur, breaking out. So, as a long round on discipleship, but do you realize that your lifestyle, and not that it's ungodly, but the pressures and demands of your society, your job, and everything else make it so difficult to actually disciple someone? And then ministers. We get so busy doing all sorts of things, at the end of the day we haven't discipled anyone. The devil is very good at making the main thing not the main thing any longer. And let me put it this way, if you're mature and you find yourself just totally and completely frustrated all the time, you're being pulled. You're being led down a path that you're not supposed to be on. Yes, Kyle?
Just a question in regards to stewardship and trusting in the sovereignty of your Father. Like the man that he's maybe called to commission here, called to manage church, called to seminary.